At Poultry Days, the US and Canadian World Games teams faced off against each other twice. Both games were recorded and you can find them on Ultiworld's video library. In this video, I'm going to give you a strategical overview of how the US played at Poultry Days, which will hopefully inform spectators and rival teams on what they might expect from the US at the World Games. Firstly, the US split into two lines which were very strict and pretty consistent between the two games. Line 1 had Chris Kocher, Khalif Al-Salam, Jibby Mickle, Kayla Helton, Claire Chastain, Sarah Mextroff, Cami Groom, Rafi Hayes, and Eric Taylor. Line 2 had Dylan Freechild, Claire Trope, Jack Williams, Carolyn Normile, Grant Lindsley, Nate Goff, Octavia Payne, Jack Hatchett, Anna Nazaroff, and Jesse Schaffner. Between the showcase game and the final, there was one change to this allocation, with Rafi Hayes and Jack Williams switching lines. Line 1 feels more like an O-line, and Line 2 feels more like a D-line. At Poultry Days, the lines just took turns. Note that in the actual World Games, the alternates will not be there to fill out the lines, so to meet the gender requirements there will have to be some flexibility. On offense, the US had two primary strategies against match defense. The first was hoe into side stack. It's a very trendy offense at the moment. We've seen Sockeye play this way before, we've seen Ring play this way before, and Fury have played this way. Here's how it works. From a pull there is a centering pass. At this point, or prior to this point, one of the two pairs of attackers are called active. These two players will look to get free simultaneously, with one player threatening deep whilst the other threatens under, continuing this cycle until one of the cutters are hit, with the next look often being to hit the other active cutter coming under. Some teams use the set play as a mechanism to reliably create an immediate deep shot, but not the US, who are tentative in this position. Only two early deep shots were hit, Schaffner failing to put enough juice on this shot to Lindsley, and Lindsley finding Hayes deep here. Across both offenses, the US preferred to take deep shots from flow. In the meantime, the inactive pair hug the sideline, the far handler clears into this developing side stack, and the active side or center handler sticks around as a dump. Once in flow, the side stack drifts over with cuts from the back, typically jogging deep, then quickly beating the inside shoulder and sprinting to get the disc. If a pass cannot be completed forwards, the disc is swung and the stack repositioned so the open lane is in front of the disc. The understanding of space in their fluid side stack is like this: 4 quadrants with the disc, dump, stack, and space. Here's another example of the space switching when the disc cannot be progressed forwards. Don't get the impression that the side stack is extremely regimented. Players can and do cut when and where they want. At times, the US has a really nice flow in this offense. So how do you counter this offense? To mess with these initiating host stack cuts, put a defender from the inactive sideline into the deep space, and then the active defenders hard deny the unders. Another option is poaching aggressively off the handlers, which will force the handlers to take swings instead of looking for these lucrative options upfield. The Canadians tried this a lot, and there are a couple of different outcomes. Sometimes the Americans dropped backwards, and that led to mostly good outcomes for the Canadians. The best outcome is actually from this Vert stack handler poach, where the disc goes back to Chastain and then there's a stall out. Generally, if you can get the Americans dropping back like this, then that's a good outcome. The approach that worked better for the Americans was pulling the handler out of the active side with an upline cut. Here you'll have to decide to stay blocking the lane and let that player be free, or follow the cut and leave the lane wide open. A cheeky option could be to pretend to track the cut, then try and flash poach the lane for a D. The final option you have is poaching off the far handler if the offense starts with one of the side handlers. This was probably one of the best poaches of the game. If it was braver, it would be rewarded with a D.
But Warfully had done a stutter step, so just another reset miscommunication that Fury throws away.
Once the offense is into side stack mode, you can try and double mark the active player if the isolation is extremely obvious. You can collectively poach into the underspace from the inactive players on the sideline like Pony did against Revolver in 2018. Check out this great video Felix made about that game. You could look to try and continue to poach into the lanes with the handlers, or you could make a concerted effort to push them into a sideline and trap them there. The second way the US liked to play was a pretty traditional vert stack. After starting or restarting play, the first cut comes from the dump or less frequently the front of stack. From a slow sideline start, the US consistently wanted to start their offense by taking a swing pass to the dump. We heard Jimmy Mickle ordering this by calling one as he picked up the disc from the sideline. Conversely, they were more likely to opt for an up line from the pull or from the center of the field. After a pass to the front of sack or the dump, the US were looking for cuts from the back. It wasn't super strict. There were moments where multiple players were cutting for the disc, there were moments where someone would cut from the middle of the stack, but overall you can expect more cuts from the players nearer the back of the stack. In general, cutters look to win their battle in the deeper space, for example by running to one side of the stack and then to the other, or with a jab to the inside shoulder. There was one immediate deep shot from this structure, but like the host stack offense, the US preferred to take deep shots from flow. In terms of how to counter this, obviously you should think about surrounding. In the mixed game, surrounding is more tricky, but there's still opportunities to set up little nice 2 or 3 person brackets where someone covers unders and someone covers deeps, ideally with a third player covering the break side. The stack was generally pretty deep, and deep shots were more likely to come from flow instead of from the handlers early on, so aggressive defenses might opt to sit under and bait a tricky deep throw out whilst denying the unders. You can also take advantage of the fact that the US consistently look to start their offense with a throw to the dump or to the front of the stack. Remember that an opponent playing vert stack is a decision the defense is complicit in. If the US are playing vert and it's hard to shut them down, throw a zone to force them to play differently. In these games, the US were only briefly forced to play through zones. They generally moved the disc quickly using long swing passes and attacked through the zone. A final addendum to the US's offensive structures is a less used set play from the host stack structure. The two active cutters make decoy cuts, and then the next closest cutter cuts to get the disc. It doesn't seem like the US opts for this set play for a specific reason, it's just another option for them. Poaching the deep is going to be more difficult from this position, but it doesn't seem like a deep shot is the plan here. This set play takes quite a while, so maybe a handler poach could be fruitful here. After the sequence is complete, they play their normal side stacky host stuff. In terms of defense, the US almost exclusively played match defense. They did not choose to play any form of zone even once. They opted to force backhand and middle during the games. There were some small instances of team defense. Here's 2 examples of side-to-side brackets between Lindsley and Goff. Both are pretty scuffed, a wide open player is left free on both occasions, but on the second, Goff manages to sprint to intercept the disc before the free Canadian can be hit. The US switched sparingly, only switching matchups when they felt they had to, like here when Finney chooses to leave her matchup to try and block a huck after Kocher runs through for the first pass D. The next free player is Rafi Hayes' mark, who Finney again picks up for a time until Hayes tracks Finney's mark under and almost gets a D here, and Finney and Hayes switch back. The US did not opt to double cover the front of the stack when the Canadians set up these predictable ISO plays. Occasionally the US would set off the Canadians to block the break side or block hucks, but it didn't seem to be that successful. In general, the US's defense was not that interesting. The best parts about their defense was just when they played really hard match defense, as you would expect. On transition between O and D, the US only opted to start fast when the D was caught. When the disc hit the ground, they took their time to set up their offense and let their main handlers pick up. So that's all I have to say strategically about the US. Obviously, this is only from a small sample size of games, and the games were not taken as seriously as the games will be taken at World Games, but hopefully this gives you a good look at how the US might play. Thanks for watching, see you next time.